So again, I am Tom Munson. Welcome to History at High Noon, the history of Sioux City hospitals. Now, there were two ways I could approach this talk. It would either be really brief or incredibly expansive, dealing with a whole history of medicine. This talk is not so much about the history of medicine, but more about the start and the development of the hospital system and hospital infrastructure in Sioux City over the last 150 years or so. So saying that, let's start at the beginning like I start all of my programs. Sioux City started in the winter of 1854-1855 by Dr. John Cook. Dr. John Cook, who planted Sioux City, was also our first physician. And he really didn't so much practice medicine here, but he did on occasion when necessary, when he was the only physician here. Other doctors moved to Sioux City in the 1850s, some familiar names to some of you, I'm sure. William Remsen Smith came to Sioux City in 1856. Of course, the former Smith School was named for him. Justice Townsend also arrived in Sioux City in 1856 and began practicing medicine. And Andrew M. Hunt, for whom Hunt School would later be named, was also a physician, an early physician here in Sioux City. Now, looking at the histories of hospitals in general, up until the 1850s or 1860s, a hospital was really an end-of-life type place. If you went to a hospital, you were dying. And there's a high probability you were ill and you were taken to a hospital to die. If you were seeking medical treatment, very often these people from the 1850s and 1860s and 70s and 80s in Sioux City, these physicians were traveling and would come to you. Children were born in the home. People were taken care of in their homes. Again, if you were going to a hospital of that time, chances are you were on your deathbed. Assuming these doctors did not come to your homes, you may have ended up in a doctor's office. Many of these doctors, before any hospitals were in Sioux City, they had offices, and you might be treated in some place like this. This is an unidentified doctor's office somewhere in Sioux City around 1890. So looking at some of these early years and what was going on, how many physicians and such were in Sioux City, the number of physicians here. In 1872, when Sioux City's population was around 4,000 people, there were 11. By 1880, when there were about 7,500 people in Sioux City, we have 18 physicians. By 1886, when Sioux City had a population around 20,000, there are 30 doctors. And finally, we have nurses. The profession of nursing, really, a professional nurse didn't develop until the 1850s or 1860s. So in 86, there are 2 private nurses and 1 midwife. Of course, the midwife are for helping with childbirth. By 1892, when Sioux City's population is around 55,000, we have 62 doctors, 19 private nurses, meaning nurses who are not affiliated with the hospital, 4 nurses associated with hospitals, and 9 nurses who are not associated with any hospitals. Of course, here we have photos of a couple of Sioux City's early physicians, J.L. Hanchett and Sidney Mosier. Sioux City's first hospital started in 1886, the Samaritan Hospital. It's the building you see on the right. Now, this was at 1701 Pierce Street. This formed out of a Samaritan home, which was kind of for the sick and ill, but by 1886 took on status as a hospital, meaning that surgery and treatments were conducted there. This hospital was made possible through the Women's Christian Association and William Jepson, who we are going to hear a lot about in a while. He's known as Sioux City's hospital builder. Jepson encouraged the Women's Christian Association to build the Samaritan Hospital in 1886. Now, Jepson was born in Denmark in 1863, came to the United States in 1870 with his family. He would attend the University of Iowa Medical School, and graduating in 1886, he came to Sioux City that same year. Jepson also helped to organize St. Joseph Hospital and the St. John Hospital, both of which we're going to talk about in a little bit. He was also largely responsible for the creation of the Sioux City Medical School at the University of the Northwest, which is the forerunner of Morningside College. And he was significant. He was really a pioneering surgeon as well, performing some first of their kind procedures. The Samaritan Hospital Board of Directors is depicted here. It's a veritable who's who of Sioux City's prominent women, including when the hospital started. The woman there in the center is Mrs. A.O. Patterson. She was part of the board when that hospital was originally established. Of course, this is a picture of their board in 1903. The Samaritan Hospital built a new facility at the same location at 17th and Pierce in 1893. The facilities listed on the first floor were offices and the superintendent's office, consultation rooms, operating room, 9 patient rooms, and a ward. So we're going to see the term ward come. That's basically a large room where there are multiple people recuperating or awaiting surgery or awaiting treatment. On the second floor were 2 more wards, 7 private rooms, a sitting room, and a maternity department. The basement had dining room and kitchen, laundry, boiler, as they called it, a dead room, what we might call today a morgue, and there was a public dispensary. There's a great little booklet with shots of some of the interiors of these hospitals. It's interesting to see how much things have changed. If you've been in a modern hospital or a modern operating room, how different things are, obviously, in the past 120 years. So this is a sterilizing room at the Samaritan Hospital. Dr. Warren's private operating room. Note the stadium seating for a surgery observation. We're going to see some great photos in a little bit of all sorts of unmasked people watching a surgery in a little bit. The Samaritan Hospital, a general operating room in 1903. This is a second floor sitting room. Now, obviously, over time, the hospital changed around a little bit. This is 10 years after it opened, so the facilities would be just a little bit different. This is a room in the maternity department, 1903. This is the Samaritan Hospital Nursing School, which started in 1894. This is the training class of 1903. I should note, since we talked about how many nurses there were early on, the number of nurses increased dramatically, especially as the different hospitals opened their nursing schools. This is a doctor's private dressing room at the Samaritan Hospital and general office. This is the men's ward on the 3rd floor of the hospital. I should specify, I am looking at these hospitals chronologically, but the first portion of the talk is really about Sioux City's Protestant hospitals, and the second half is about Sioux City's Catholic hospitals, and then the oddball hospitals that come at the end as well. So the next hospital to begin in the Protestant line of facilities is the German Lutheran Hospital at 509 27th Street, opening in 1901. This hospital was started by Soren Stotz. Stotz was born in Danish-occupied Flensburg, Germany in 1869. He studied at the University of Stuttgart and the University of Copenhagen before coming to the United States in the 1890s and studying at Harvard University. He practiced medicine in Essex, Iowa for a while, and came to Sioux City in 1898, where he practiced homeopathy and surgery. In 1901, he formed the Lutheran Hospital Association, which in turn formed the Lutheran General Hospital. Dr. John Herman was the head surgeon at the German Lutheran Hospital from 1901 to 1906, and that hospital started its nursing school in 1901. At this time, nurses training could be anywhere from 6 weeks to about 2 years. In the early 20th century, especially by the 1920s, it became officially nationwide and a 3-year training program. And the 3-year training course at the Lutheran Hospital began in 1908. Here is Dr. Herman performing a surgery, not at the Lutheran Hospital, but instead at the Samaritan Hospital around 1905. St. John's is the next hospital in the Protestant line. This was located at 803 14th Street and opened in 1908. Jepson, who had started the Samaritan Hospital and the St. Joseph's Hospital, disagreed with some of their boards on certain issues, so he founded St. John's Hospital privately. The 50-bed hospital was located in the former Sioux City College of Medicine building. Now, we'll talk about the Sioux City College of Medicine in a while. Jepson later offered this building to the Methodist Church for use as a hospital in 1919. We'll see more about that later. The Lutheran Hospital added onto its facility in 1910. You can see it's that brown brick building as depicted in this postcard. The Maternity Hospital opened in 1913 at 1111 28th Street, next door to the Florence Crittenden Center. Dr. Agnes Eichelberg founded the hospital in 1913. The hospital traces its origin back to 1894, when Eichelberger had established the Women's Home for Unfortunate Girls. Basically, women who got pregnant without being married made you unfortunate. The use of this hospital declined in the 1920s as other hospitals in Sioux City opened their own maternity departments. They closed in 1928 because of this, but found new use as a home for the Methodist Hospital Nurses' Home. Oopsie daisy. Here we can go back to the Lutheran Hospital, which opened a nurses' home in 1916, and on the right-hand side you can see a 1930s addition. Lutheran Hospital had another addition in 1919, which you can see there on the left. The Methodist Hospital started in 1920. I mentioned Jepson offered St. John's Hospital to the Northwest Iowa Methodist Conference of the Methodist Episcopal Church on the condition that they maintain an excellent Protestant hospital. The Methodists did purchase the building in 1920 and began operating temporarily there until a new hospital building could be erected. At the same time, the Samaritan Hospital was raising funds for a new building in 1922. Their site was to be between 29th Street, Douglas, and Stone Park Boulevard. Well, that plan with the Samaritan kind of fell through, and the Samaritan and Methodist hospitals merged in 1923. The Methodist Hospital, here, moves into the Samaritan building, which you see on the left. Fundraising still continued for a new building for the joint hospital. Here is architects Beutler and Arnold's design for this new building around 1923. The result would look quite a bit different, and the Methodist Hospital under construction here in 1925. There is a great little prospectus when this structure was built that shows the lot plan. And there's a little listing on all the floor plans here. You can see, here's the basement or the ground floor level, which included dining rooms, drug rooms, supply rooms, classroom, kitchens, laundry, storage rooms, carpenter shop, isolation wards, and nurse's living room. The first floor included the reception room, which you can see depicted here, waiting room, business office, private patient rooms, and wards. The second floor of the hospital was dedicated to men. It had men's wards and private patient rooms. The third floor was for the women, the women's ward, private patient rooms, and a maternity department, which included labor rooms, sterilizing room, delivery room, and nursery. And the fourth floor was dedicated to surgery. We have a children's ward, private patient rooms, nurses' workrooms, laboratory, x-ray room, drug room, instrument room, and the surgery department with 3 major operating rooms, 2 minor operating rooms, and sterilizing rooms. This is the Methodist Hospital Nurses' Home built in 1944. On the left, you can see an addition to the Methodist Hospital Nurses' Home built in 1947. 1948 brought about a proposed addition to the Methodist Hospital. Groundbreaking for that addition was held in 1951. And that structure was completed in 1953. Here you can see the completed Methodist Hospital. The $500,000 addition, which you can see here in the lower left, added 45 patient rooms and increased the hospital's capacity by 40%. The Lutherans, just a couple blocks away, also proposed an addition to their hospital in 1948. Their addition was completed in 1952. This increased the number of beds at the Lutheran Hospital from 86 to 158. In between the Methodist and Lutheran hospitals, geographically speaking, was the Siouxland Rehabilitation Center at 29th and Douglas, which was built in 1955 by the Woodbury County Society for Crippled Children and Adults, and this was there to aid the physically handicapped. And here we can see some treatment at the Siouxland Rehabilitation Center. Lastly, the Lutheran Hospital is added onto in 1965 with an intensive care unit, 10 private rooms, a surgery recovery room, and a fracture surgery room. I say last, but not lastly, because now we have the final merger of the Protestant hospitals into St. Luke's Regional Medical Center in 1966. The two hospitals, only a couple blocks apart, had talked about a merger since the 1940s. Now, there were many advantages, mostly for efficiency, fixing rates, unifying treatment, and making it just a better hospital. The new hospital building, which you can see depicted in their newsletter, was announced in 1968. Groundbreaking for the new St. Luke's Hospital was held in 1969, and the completed hospital opened in 1972. But this was not it. There are continual expansions we'll see over the next couple of decades. Here we can see this whole St. Luke's campus in 1972. From left to right, lower left, you can see the Methodist Hospital. Above that, you can see the Rehabilitation Center, the new St. Luke's main building, and on the right, you can see the Lutheran Hospital and the Lutheran Hospital Nurses' Home. The expanding hospital transformed a neighborhood. The former Lutheran Hospital and Nurses' Home was Lutheran Hospital Nurses' Home was raised for parking in 1972. Some of the houses were moved. In all, between 1966 and 1980, 44 houses were moved or raised for St. Luke's expansion. This image shows preparation for an addition on the south end of St. Luke's in August of 1977. This image shows that addition under construction. And here you can see St. Luke's South Wing completed in 1979. The upper two floors would be added in 1983. Continuing with St. Luke's, the Grandview Professional Center opened in 1989. This $5 million, 50,000 square foot office building housed physicians' offices. In 2012, this became to the St. Luke's School of Nursing. And this image depicts the construction of St. Luke's Physician Center No. 2 and Pierce Street Same-Day Surgery Center in 2002. The $35 million complex opened in 2003. St. Luke's opened the Sunnybrook Medical Plaza in 2013, and St. Luke's became part of the Unity Point system and was renamed Unity Point St. Luke's in 2013. Let's go way back in time. Now, back to the 1890s, St. Joseph Mercy Hospital began in this house at 2804 Jennings Street in May of 1890. Once again, our pal William Jepson convinced Mother Agatha, superior of the Sisters of Mercy of Dubuque, to travel to Sioux City to establish a hospital. She, the Woodbury County Board of Supervisors, and the City Council approved this effort. So this home, one of John Pierce's, the North Side developer at 2804 Jennings, was purchased and equipped for $12,000, and they received their first patient on the 14th of May, 1890. They didn't stay there very long. St. Joseph's would move a few blocks away from that house to Ingleside in August of 1890. Overcrowding at the old hospital forced them to move to the home of Ingleside, which was another home of John Pierce at this time. That's a small building you can see there on the left. He sold his acreage, Ingleside, which is at present-day 21st and Court Streets, to the Sisters of Mercy for $30,000. The brick hospital building, which you can see on the right, was completed in November of 1890. The building was soon added on to. This is the new main building of St. Joseph's, built only 9 years later. This is looking north from 21st Street. Now looking from the east side of the building to the west, this is the other side of that 1899 building, which you can see on the left. And on the right, you can see that 1890 hospital building. This is a photo I was talking about with the surgery, with the audience. No glass, just right out in the open. This is St. Joseph's Clinical Operating Room in 1903. Again, all these upcoming photos are all going to be from 1903. This is a picture of St. Joseph's Dispensary. One of St. Joseph's private patient rooms. St. Joseph's large, round ward. The Pelletier patient room. This is also St. Joseph's. This is Dr. Jepson's private operating room. Rather sparse. This is the St. Joseph's School of Nursing graduates, 1903. Their nursing program began in 1900. St. Vincent Hospital began in 1907 and was located at 621 Pierce Street. Mother Mary Gertrude came to Sioux City in 1901 after a fire had destroyed her Elkhorn, South Dakota, St. Gertrude's Convent. She and her fellow nuns started Villa Maria, which was a home for working girls, in May of 1901 in the former Fred T. Evans Senior House, which you can see here at the corner of 7th and Pierce. Community requests, however, would change Villa Maria's mission, and Mother Gertrude and her nuns organized the Benedictine St. Vincent Hospital in 1907. There is Mary Mother Gertrude, and here's a postcard from around 1910 showing their hospital, and kind of in the left center is an addition that went up sometime around 1905. St. Joseph's addition. We're going back to another hospital here. This $100,000 expansion increased patient capacity by 200 beds. The Benedictine sisters are added again. In 1916, they raised $150,000 for the construction of a new hospital building, which you can see here. This is the new St. Vincent Hospital, opened in March of 1918. Oopsie daisy. Jumping back to St. Joseph's now, a new nurses' home, $120,000 nurses' home, designed by William Steele, opened at St. Joseph Hospital in 1917. Here are some interiors of St. Joseph Hospital. This is their nurses' classroom in 1918. An operating room, also in 1918. Not much has changed from the 1903 operating rooms. St. Joseph X-ray Laboratory. Private patient rooms. St. Joseph underwent another addition in 1925. It's the building you can see there in the foreground on this postcard. Here's kind of here's an aerial view of St. Joseph Mercy Hospital around 1943, showing left to right the Good Samaritan home kind of up on the hill, or the Good Shepherd home rather, pardon me, the 1917 nurses home with the 1941 addition, the boiler house in the middle center, the 1925 addition, a 1942 addition which replaced the original 1890 structure, the main 1899 building, and on the far right is the 1911 addition. Next up is just another photo looking from the opposite direction with the nurses' home there in the foreground and the 1925 addition to St. Joseph Hospital. This addition from 1942-43, this $500,000 addition built in 42 and finished in 43. This increased hospital capacity from 200 to 300 beds and also included a chapel, physical therapy unit, obstetrics unit, convent quarters, and 5 wards. St. Joseph undergoes another addition starting in 1951. This would be the largest hospital project up to about 1966. The 7-story, $4.5 million project was the largest expansion up to this time. Completion of this addition made St. Joseph's the largest hospital in Sioux City, entirely with 400 beds, 400 new beds, in addition to the 300 they already had, 4 emergency rooms, 6 examination rooms, 3 recovery rooms, autopsy room, waiting rooms, dental offices. In all, St. Joseph had 18 operating rooms. This is kind of going back a little bit, but I just love this picture of the construction of this addition to St. Joseph's Hospital. And of course, here is the completed St. Joseph's addition in 1952, shown in this 1957 photo. St. Vincent, across town, had a proposed addition as well in 1948. You may be noticing there are a lot of expansions in the late 40s and early 50s. Well, of course, through the 1930s, we're in Depression, so nobody's really building much of anything. World War II, building materials are scarce, and immediately after World War II, there's still a scarcity in building supplies. By the late 40s and early 50s, there's a baby boom, there's a polio epidemic, and there are materials available to build these new structures. The addition would look a little different than its proposal. Here is the addition nearing completion to St. Vincent Hospital in 1953. I'm not going to read all of this, but this is the dedication ceremony of St. Vincent Hospital in May of 1953. St. Vincent's Obstetrics Department in 1953. And the new operating rooms in 1953. The entire 4th floor of St. Vincent Hospital addition was dedicated to surgery. 7 new operating rooms opened that year. Also going on at St. Vincent, St. Gertrude Nurses Hall was built at 621 Jennings Street in 1957. Well, before 1957, there were 6 smaller houses on this block for housing nurses, including the building you see here on the right, which is a former T.J. Stone house. T.J. Stone was an early Sioux City banker. St. Vincent proposed an addition in 1967. Here, that project is under construction. And here is that project at completion. This is St. Vincent Hospital main entrance as it would have looked in 1969, although this is a 1973 photograph. Here's just a list of the who's involved in the 1969 construction project. We have a great collection of slides of Mercy and of St. Vincent's and St. Joe Hospital. So, well, I've got the pictures, I might as well use them, right? Here's an aerial view of the St. Vincent Hospital campus in 1970. Left to right, you can see the 1917 main building, the 1957 St. Gertrude Nurses Home, the 1953 addition, and the 1969 addition. St. Joseph announces a move to downtown in 1976. St. Joseph Mercy announces construction of a $22.5 million hospital. It was to be located between 3rd, 5th, Jennings, and Court Streets, only a block away from the St. Vincent campus. Business owners, however, in the area didn't like this proposal because that hospital is going to be built where their business was. So this plan was abandoned. But that project abandonment led to the merger of St. Vincent and St. Joseph Mercy Hospital in 1977. After the plans for St. Joseph fell through, plans that dated back to 1973 were revived of a merger of this hospital. That merger became Marion Health Center, and that project came to completion in March of 1977. Here is the new Marion Health Center under construction in 1980. Marion Health Center would open in 1982. There was a great newspaper article at the time of its published at the time of Marion Health Center's opening, which kind of showed floor plans. Here you can see the first floor, which included mechanical rooms, the main lobby, and an education room. The third floor, because there was really no specified second floor, if you've been in Mercy Hospital, which was Marion, you know how confusing that building can be. There are about 18 levels, it seems like. Here on the third floor, we have more mechanical rooms, the kitchen, food storage, food cart lines, and cafeteria. The fourth floor was dedicated to emergency room, mechanical rooms, and radiology. The fifth floor was laboratory, surgery, and 4 intensive care units. The sixth floor included a medical nursing unit, post-critical care unit, progressive care unit, private rooms, and semi-private rooms. The seventh floor was for general surgery, urology and oncology, private rooms, and semi-private rooms. The eighth floor, dedicated to orthopedic and neurosurgical unit, orthopedic unit, private patient rooms, and more semi-private patient rooms. The central medical building, which you can see on the left, and a proposed addition is depicted here in 1983. Marion Health Center used the former Northwestern National Bank, that's the building on the far left, for housing physicians' offices. Mercy Hospital opened the new cardiology center in 2003. Marion Health Center was renamed Mercy Medical Center in 1999. Let's go way back again. The Sioux City College of Medicine. The College of Medicine started as the medical department of the University of the Northwest. The University of the Northwest, of course, is the predecessor of Morningside College. The University of the Northwest closed during the Panic of 1893, but Dr. Jepson, George W. Beggs, J.H. Tallboy, Dr. Wheeler, Frank Murphy, and Edward Hornibrook thought that the school should continue. So they organized the Sioux City College of Medicine in 1893. Sioux City College of Medicine built this structure in 1898. Now you'll recognize this. This was, I hope you recognize it. We didn't look at it that long ago. This is the former St. John, or the would later be the St. John Hospital. After leasing space in the Plymouth block, the college built this new school at 803 14th Street. The college outgrew space in that building and moved to the YMCA building in 1902. This is a picture of the College of Medicine class of 1905. In its first decade of operation, 1893 to 1903, that college graduated 84 doctors. This is an interior of the YMCA/college amphitheater in 1903. Now, there is no Sioux City Medical School any longer. That's because it merged with the University of South Dakota Medical School in 1908. There were multiple sanatoriums in Sioux City. These would be non-surgical. This would be really a place, places like these sanatoriums, again, would be where the tired or ill were treated, and this would be really prior to one's death. So the E.C. Peters home, which would today be on the Morningside College campus, was briefly a home from 1892 to 1894. The Woodbury County Detention Hospital began in 1905. This was a hospital for people with contagious diseases, mostly for tuberculosis, typhoid, diphtheria. It was located downtown, but there are a lot of people downtown, and you really don't want a whole lot of people with contagious diseases in the center of town. So the hospital was moved to Sawyer's Bluff in 1914. This hospital would open and close as epidemics came and went. It was also operated as a tuberculosis hospital for a time, and eventually River Heights Hospital. All those would close by the 1960s. John Wanco opened the Wanco Cure House at 129 Kansas Street. This would be mostly a homeopathic medicine and baths. So John Wanco had offices in downtown where he operated for a while, but from 19-teens to the 1920s, he was operating out of this rather haunted-looking house. The Neal Institute at 1107 to 1109 Pierce Street was around from 1912 to 1918. This was a drug treatment center established by local guys F.J. and W.R. Rohde. The Hillside Sanatorium at 1816 West Street started in 1915 by a guy we've seen before. Dr. Soren Stodds started this homeopathic hospital after leaving the Lutheran Hospital. Soren Stodds kind of he was from all reports an excellent surgeon, but as time went on, as time progressed, he thought that homeopathy rather than surgery was a better medical treatment. So we have this sanatorium, which he operated until his health began to fail in 1926. Here's an interior of the Hillside Sanatorium. This image depicting the library hospital service supplying books to patients around 1923. This facility would reopen by Dr. Jameson in 1941 as a Sioux City Osteopathic Hospital and would be operated as such until 1957. It would later be known as the Gordon Memorial Hospital and later the Gordon Chemical Dependency Center, which is today Rosecrans Treatment Center just a couple of blocks away. Morningside General Hospital attempt number 1. Sioux City Civil Defense Department advocated a Morningside area hospital, actually as early as the 1950s, but this was a proposal that came about in the 1960s. All of Sioux City's hospitals at this time were on the north and west sides. Well, that was a failure, and Morningside General Hospital attempt number 2, St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, when it was still St. Joseph Mercy Hospital, partnered with the National Health Services Corps to open the Morningside Mercy Medical Park, located at 4545 Sergeant Road in 1977. And believe it or not, we've just made it through 130 years of, 160 years of Sioux City medical history. So that's all I've got for you. Thank you for coming.